Hello, in this video we're going to talk about Go functions, and we're going to dive deep into all the concept and everything related to Go functions. So you're going to find out about simple functions, receiver functions, and how to do like error handling in functions and many more things. So stay tuned and let's just find out what can we do with Go functions. So let's begin and talk about the first example of Golang function. So as you can see here, I have a very simple function, just main function that everyone is familiar with it. So you have func, and then you have the name of the function, and then parentheses, and then something. So this is a very simple and the first thing you see in Golang. But let's just expand this one. So I'll create greeting, and then I will get a name. So name will be string, and then the return type will be also string, and then all I have to do is fmt sprintf. So here now we have a very simple greeting function. Let's use it here, and if you want to do just use it, it's very simple, greeting, and then we need to pass the name, which is a string. So to begin with, let's just put moho. And because the return type is a string, it's not actually going to do anything. So if I do go run main.go, we are not gonna get anything. So we need to print it. Why not? Let's do that. Now we are going to get some result. And if I want to just repeat the scenario with something else, let's say now we are going to get the same thing. So this is about reusability. We have one line of code or one function, and then we can use it many times. But here, let's just expand it to more. This greeting function, we can expand it to more interesting one. The one thing that I can think of is the name. So if the name is empty, we can do a few things. To begin with, let's just return error. So I have this greeting function, I'm returning string, and also I want to return error as well. So if I'm going to return two things or two variables, more than one, it's better to put them in parentheses. So it's also going to return error as well. So now here we are returning error as a second argument. The first argument would be a string, and then we are checking if there is, for example, the name is empty, then there will be an error. So with these two, we need to just run them differently. If I just try to run it now, I'll get the same result, but as you can see, the output is not just a string, it's an object, and there is no error, comma here. So now we have value, which is a string, we have error, which is error. Now I am going to say if error is nil, there we go. So we have error handling, and then we are printing the value. Now if we run it one more time, you can see we are going to get the result. So let me just comment this line of code, and let's comment this bit and run it one more time. There we go. Hi Moho, let's do some Golang func practice. Okay, and if the value is empty, so let's just do it this way again. I'm going to copy the whole things, put a space. I will just try to replicate the same thing but with the empty string. So here this time we have empty string. Let's see, what do we get? We should not get, well, the value shouldn't be there, but let's see it. Okay, error, name cannot be empty. But because we are coming to the, there is no else statement, we are gonna get the output as well. So why not to put everything in an else statement here, and then move on. Now we're not gonna get this empty line here. So I should do the same thing for line above. And okay, cool. Let's just clean up. Okay, very simple. Now we're gonna just get the error, nothing for the value. And if I continue, there we go, there was an error, name cannot be empty for the second one. By looking at these few lines, you realize that very quickly that we are repeating ourselves. So we're checking for the error, and then we are printing the value. We're checking for the error, we're printing the value. So one way to fix it is to use what happens in most libraries with a must, like the verb or the function we are doing. So must greeting or must greet pattern. So we're going to say must greet. We are going to get exactly what is the return type from our function, so string and error, and then we're going to return the string. So we're going to say if there is error, just return that one, otherwise return the value. So all we have to do now is to just use must greet, and if you look at that here, all we have to say is println, and then what is our function name is greeting. So we're going to say greeting and whatever we have to pass. Let's pass it as an empty one, and then the next one, let's just call it moho, and I'm going to comment out all my code. So in the main function, we only have two things. So we have, here. So we are printing greeting, but now all we have to do, we need to just put it in must greet and the same thing. So that's printing, and then we have must greet. There we go. Let's run it this time and see what do we get. Okay, cool. That's what we wanted to see. So we are seeing, I am going to just comment this one. So we are seeing the first one, because it's empty, we're going to get an error. The second time, we are going to get the message. With the message, we still can do quite a few things, because message, we are returning only the value. So we can just say at the end, let's just put /n, and now we're going to get empty line after the greeting message as well. At this stage, our function is, the code we wrote is quite like flexible, and also it's dynamic, so we don't need to be worried about error handling because we are doing it in a must function. And also if the name is empty, we just return error, otherwise we just continue. But let's move on to the next step. Okay, the next thing I'm going to talk about is the variadic parameters. So with the variadic parameters, what I mean is very simple. Let's assume we have a sum function, and in sum function we're going to add some numbers. It's quite simple to just think about 1 or 2 or 3, but sometimes we don't know how many numbers we need to add. And the way that you can do it in Golang is very simple. So you're going to say sum function, and then you are going to receive values. All the values are int, as you can see. And the whole point is to put ... then the value type. It's going to receive all of these values, put them into a slice, and then as you can see now we have a range. So we have a loop with a range, and then we're going to add them together. So it's very simple to use it. I am going to again comment these 2 lines and move on. So we are still in the main function. We have sum, so we have println, and then sum 2, 3, and 5. So we should get 10. There we go. So we're going to get 10. If it is again another number, so another 5, still going to work. That's very simple. So that's one way of using it. The other way to use it is to create a slice of these numbers. So this time, instead of putting ... before the type, we would put ... after numbers. So here with this example, we're basically taking a slice, which was here, and then spread them out. So with this one, you're spreading them out. With this version, as you can see, we are getting spreaded values and then put them into slice. So both of these two would be the same thing. I'm just going to print both of them at the same time, just in case. So there we go. Now we're going to get 15 and 15. So this is variadic. But the whole key point here is the last parameter in the function should be variadic. So if you have something after, it's not going to work. So let's say if you have a string, there we go. Now it's not gonna work because can only use ... with the final parameter in the list. So I can just move it to the beginning, and now it should be fine. So the last parameter in the function should be variadic, and leave the rest as it is. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next thing now. The next thing that I want to talk about is stateful functions. So basically, let's think about what we have here, power of 2. So we have power of 2, which return a function. That function also return an integer or int type. So as you can see, I am returning a func, and every time I'm adding 1, so x plus equal 1, and then I just calculate the power of 2. All I have to do is very simple. So I'm going to create a function because we are returning a func. So power 2 now is a func. So we're calling power of 2, return a function. That function we're calling it and put the value in the val, and then we are printing that value. So if I just run it now, I'm going to get power of 2 is 4. So let's just do it a few times. And all I have to do is to remove this reassigning the value. Okay, cool. We don't need to initialize it anymore. So we're going to get 4, 9, 16, 25, continuing, and just the next number. But the idea is to keep the state of the variable. So this function, because we're having like x out of the scope of this return function, then it keep the value and always just add it. So it will be always keep the next number. So this is a stateful function in Golang. Okay, I'll move on, and then I also want to talk about if you want to name a return value. So if you remember a few minutes ago, we were just talking about the sum function, and our sum function is returning an int. If I want to just name this one, all I have to do is say total is an int. So I'm going to just put it in parentheses. So now we have a variable, we call it total, and that's the return variable. So now I don't need to just present the total. And here, because we are adding value to the total, I don't need to also return the total. All I have to do is just to return. Means the function is finished. Let's do something. And we can just check it in a few seconds. Do I recommend naming your return variables in Go? Probably not, because this is a small example. As you can see, the code is not very readable, so let's just leave it like this. So yes, we have initialized the variable here when we were just working on the return type of the function sum, but still you get the idea. You're returning empty for someone who is new to the code, or someone is trying to read the code, is a little bit less readable. But let's again check our code to see if it works. I'm gonna run the code one more time. Yes, it does work, but as you can see, it's less readable. So that's, by the way, if you want to just name your return variable, that's how you're gonna do it. Moving on to the next one, I am going to talk about how to make a function public or private in Golang. It's very simple, but let's see how it's done. So basically, I'm going to create another file, visitor.go. Visitor.go is inside a package called visitor, so I'm going to use it within our function, so the main function. Let's quickly go and create a new visitor. So all I have to do is this one. So visitor, it will be a visitor dot new. So now we have visitors, and if I want to use it with something, at the moment I don't have any function, but you can see, let's just ignore it for a second. So by underscore we are just ignoring the return value from the new, but the whole idea was to just create a public function. So this public function we have on the left side, let me just close this one, less distraction. Because the value is capital, the first letter is capital, I can access it from outside. But the moment I make it new, you can see there will be error, and I cannot also use new as a small one because, as you can see, new not exported by package visitor. But if I make it capital, so, and then come here, remove everything, put dot, I already have new function. So that's how you make a function private or public in Golang, just making the first letter capital or small. The next thing that I want to do is to work on a receiver function. So we have a struct called here visitor. Struct has two attributes, total and active, both are integer, and then we have a new function, so create a new visitor by default value of 0, 0, and the next thing that I want to do, create a receiver. So we are going to work on a visitor, for example here, just someone visiting a website. That's how it's going to be done. So the first time they're going to visit, there will be one active user, and also the total would be total plus 1. And then if that person leave, then the active would be 1 less. So we're going to just minus 1, but the total will still stay the same because that's the total visit to that page. And we're going to work on this example and see lots of fun here. So now let's work when someone join as a visitor. So all I have to do is say join, so it's capital because I am going to work as a public function, and then I can just work on them in the main one. So with the join, all I have to do now is to say, for example, I need to have access to this visitor. So all I can say is v visitor, and what I want to do is to say v dot active, because someone is joined, is plus equal 1, and v dot total also plus equal 1. So now someone has joined. The only problem I see here is join is very common name, and what is joining? So and then if I have another, for example, library or function, then if I want to use join, it will be a little bit like misleading. All I want to do is to use a receiver, or make this function a receiver. So here we are going to make sure if any variable is a type of visitor, then can have access to the join. The way it's done is to just put receivers. So we have join function, and the receivers would be v, and then the type is visitor. Now we don't need the second v. All we have to do is to call it something like this. So now we have the join function. Let me quickly do the same thing for if someone leave, what we're going to do. So let's call it left, and then the active one would be -1. The total is not going to change. And the next thing that I want to do still is a receiver function, is to just print out, for example, the total active and total visitors. So now that's the total string as well. Let's test all of them one by one. We have, let's call it visitor, and here we have visitors. So we have visitor dot join. So as you can see, because the visitor is the type of visitor struct, then we have the join function. So I'm going to use it join. Actually, I will have 4 people join, or 4 we have 4 visitors to the website, and the next thing I want to do is to call visitor, and we are returning actually here, as you can see, a string. So let's just put them in a println, is the total one. So we should have 4 active user, and also in the total we should have 4 users as well. So now to fix all of these things, we need to make sure all our receivers work with value, not the reference. So what we're going to do, we're just going to put stars at the beginning of all our receivers. So basically they are pointer now, and they are now receivers by value. So the join function, if you want to call it, join function is a receiver function by visitor value, not the reference. So it's a value based receiver. And the same for the left. I'm going to do the same thing for string function as well. And the next thing would be also the total string. So if you run it this time, now we are going to get 4 active users, and also the total are also 4. And if I just do visitor dot left, so we should have 3 active users because 4 joined, then 1 of them left, then still we have 4 visit in total, but 3 of them are active. I'm going to run it one more time. Now we have 3 active users, and the total is still 4. At the moment, all our functions join and left receive only, well, they only work with 1. But how about if we have a bulk activities? Probably it doesn't make sense here, but they just assume it does. So what I mean is we want to be able to pass a value, for example, I don't know, 10 people left at the same time, or 10 people join at the same time. So let's just create a function called bulk activity, only receive an int. So you will see what do I mean by that. So we should have a function as a return type, and then that function will have an integer. So then we can just use it for left or join and anything else. So we're going to work on a left very quickly. Well, that's not minus. There we go. So this is basically what we want to do, but we want to be more, for example, this is for when someone leave. We want to be more dynamic and just have the same thing for join and leave at the same time. So means, for example, we're going to have some expression here. So one for joining, one for leaving, for example. I'm going to say, for example, a switch case, switch activity, and then we're going to say case, I don't know, join, then do something, and then case left, do something else. And we are gonna do, for example, there we go. So here is, as an example, here is for the left. There we go. We can just do the same thing for join, which is plus. So that's the active one, and also that's the total one. So we are saying if someone join, then return a function. When someone leave, return this function. Our function should always return a func with int. So the next thing that I want to do is the default case, and in a default, if you pass join, it will accept it, and then you can pass many values here, and if it is left, we're going to do the same thing. So what do I mean now here is this. So I'm going to remove, well, I'm going to keep everything here, left, and here would be left. So 10 people joined. I am going to print it here. Good. So, and let's call the bulk left here this time with, I don't know, 5 of them. So how many do we have? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 people joined, 1 left. So at this stage, with the active users should be 3, total should be 4. Then 10 people joined, so the active one should be 13, total should be 14, because we don't update the total at all. Total is only increased, we don't remove anything from it. Now 5 of them left, so we have 13. If 5 leave, it should be 8, but the total should still be 14. So let's see, what do we get? So we have 3 and 4, then we have 13 active users, so this line 25 here, and then 14, and then 5 of them leave, we have 8 users, and then we have 14 users. Here we did like something very simple. We're still not doing any error handling. We're gonna do it in a few seconds. And also, I don't really like it because we are copying ourselves all the time. And also, if I wanted to use, for example, here left, it doesn't work because left doesn't accept integer. What I'm going to do, I'm going to refactor this one to more meaningful or just more readable code. So with the left, we know we need a function which receive an int and then manipulate the data. Let's do it now. So we have a func, and then we have a func, so then we have as a visitor, let's call it left. Here, remember, I'm not using a capital because I don't want this one to be public. And here I receive, let's say, visitors. Well, that would be very not nice. So I'm going to just value, which will be int. And remember, again, our func is not only the receiver should be int, there is no return type. So I'm going to just leave it here like that. And all I have to do is to say v.active -1. Okay, cool. So at this stage, if someone leave, I need to have a return function. I have exactly what I wanted on the top line. So it is a function which the argument is int. So here now you can see, instead of having like writing the function, we can just have literally the same functionality. It is not public, it's just private to the package or a visitor package. And we can do the same thing for join. So let's do quickly for the join as well. So we have left. I am gonna do the same thing here for the join. So let's copy them and put it on the top. Func v as a visitor. And let's remove the rest. Okay, cool. Let's call it join. Pretty much the same thing, really. Nothing very different. But here now, instead of all of these things that I am doing here, I can say v dot join, and it's much readable in this case, and it's easier to manage later on. You'll see what do I mean in a few seconds. Okay, so we have join and we have left. And if I run the code now, I still get the same number. So we have 8, we have 14, and we have all of those numbers that we were talking about. The other thing that I don't like about this function is that I'm hard coding these values. And again, here, I am actually using these values. So here I'm using these values, all of them are hard coded. Let's quickly just create some const values. Tracked activity, so it will be left. So here I can easily just use it in a different manner. So I can have access to this const everywhere. And so we have left and join. So what I want to do here is say visitor. So we have a problem here because name of our variable and name of our package are the same thing. So let's, everywhere we have visitors, let's call them, I'm just going to call all of them V because it will be, okay, let's call it V. Here should be visitor, okay, visitor, here also visitor. Okay, now everything should work. If I want to have access to join or left, now it's from visitor actually in this case, dot add activity. Okay, and the next one should be here is subtract activity. So I can use exactly the same thing, but before moving there, I don't really like the activity string. I want to just call it activity type. There we go. So we have much as well. We have a readable code here, instead of like all the time going and using, for example, what is it called? Just hard code our code. We have like a constant. So if you come back to switch case here, all I want to do is to say add activity type, and here subtract activity type. So at the moment everything works fine, and now we are only having one source of truth, which is here. So if I just change this one to add, I don't need to go and update all my code everywhere, so it will still work. So we have 14 and 8 everywhere. So moving on, I want to talk about anonymous function. Anonymous function is a function that doesn't have any name, and as you say, it's anonymous. You can use it in many places, but let's use it in a main function. And let's just say, for example, func, because there is no name, so you can just say func, and then open and close curly braces, and then let's call it as well. So that is anonymous function. There is no name, and it's going to be immediately run. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say fmt dot let's say println run main dot go. We are going to get anonymous function as well. So basically, anonymous function is a function that doesn't have a name, and we don't have to run it immediately. Basically, what we can do, we can just create a variable from this. For example, let's say anonymous. It will be something like that. And now anonymous could be a function. Now I can call anonymous if I want, just if I type it properly. Okay, yes. And now I can just call anonymous, and it will be the same thing again. There we go. So we are calling anonymous function. So now that we have anonymous function, let's move and talk about the next topic, which is a defer function. Basically, if you're working with a database, or if you're writing something to a file, or whatever you do, and basically you want to close the connection, or you want to run something at the very end of your function, let's closing the connection, let's say closing the connection or anything else, then you can use defer function in Golang. So I am going to comment these two lines. Let's say when we are joining something here, so where do we have join? There we go, here. Let's say I want to, at the very end, I want to do something. In a normal like scenario, probably when you join here, you might just open a connection to database, okay, and then you want to write something to database, and then you want to close the connection. So closing the connection, you don't have to just wait for the end. You can, in Golang, you can just put it in a defer function, which is an anonymous function, and you can just say whenever we get to the very bottom, then you can just run this one. So let's see it in example. At the very beginning of the function, I'm just going to just say, for example, let's print something. Okay, so we have a new joiner, and then let's put the defer function, just whatever we want to do. So defer, it will be an anonymous function, and then immediately we need to just call it as well. Here I'm going to just say, let's say, closing the connection. So if I'm running my function now, my join function, it's going to call this, well, line 42, print something, and then it's going to add something to active and total. Then it's going to call the defer function. Just to prove the point, let's first of all run our call. You can see we have a new joiner, then we have close connection, because we have a bulk join, so we're only calling it once. But just to prove the point, if I put this defer function on top, now what do we have here? We're still going to get the same thing. So we're going to get a new joiner and then closing the connection. So defer function, no matter what, it always run at the very end. But there is something about this defer function. If you have multiple defer function, they're going to run on a stack, basically. So let's just say this is number 1, and this is after adding total. Yep. So I'm going to put some dash here. And if you run it now, it will just come here. There is a defer. It will put it to the stack. Then there is a print, which is going to run it. Then there will be these 2 lines. It's going to run these 2 lines as well. Then there is another defer, put it on the stack. We are at the end of the function. Now we'll pick the first thing on the stack, which is this defer, then this line. So let's run it again. So we have new joiner. Then we have after adding the total, which is here. Then we are closing the connection. So remember, if you have multiple defer, it's going to run them as a stack. But the question is, do you need multiple defer or not? Maybe you need to think about your design and then decision based on that. I would personally think we don't need a defer function, multiple defer functions, but it's really up to you, and you need to remember, if you're going to use them, then that's the caveat, or that's the behavior of multiple defer function. So now that we have a defer function, and the next thing that we need to talk about is the panic. Because remember, in a join, you cannot join as 0, or you cannot join with negative number, because it doesn't make sense. And what we want to do basically is here, I'm going to say if value, which is here, so if value is less than 0, let's just panic and just say negative number is not accepted. And now if I run my code, I am going to get the panic here. So let's quickly see that. I'm going to run it. Actually, the number is not 0, so I'm going to just say -2. So we can fix it also in a different way. So we can use uint here, so unsigned integer, but we just want to go through the examples here to give the idea of how to panic and how to recover from the panic. But the first thing is, so we're going to get -2, value is less than 0, and it's going to panic. So yes, basically we're going to get the new joiner. We have a defer function. It's also going to close the connection, so that's very good. That's a real life scenario. And if you're going to write some code, opening a connection to database or writing or reading something from the file, whatever can happen. And then if that happens, you want to make sure the connection is closed. So we're closing the connection. That's a very good thing. And now the panic happened because negative number is not accepted. And as you can see, it's happened in a main.go line 24. So that's line 24. We were calling this function, and then it's coming from the visitor.goLine49. So that's here. So main.go, call the function. That function has the panic on line 49. So now that we have a panic, we need to do something about it. We want to do the same thing also for the left as well. So we have the join and we have the left, because again, it doesn't make sense if -2 people leave. So let's leave it for now. But moving on, we're going to just talk about this join function alone. So we have a panic. Do we want to panic or not? That's again a different question, because really a catastrophe should happen if you're going to panic. But let's say this is a catastrophe in our service. We want to do something about it. Okay, I'm going to close, well, I'm going to keep this one actually. Yes, I'm going to keep it here. I just wanted to get rid of it, but let's keep it here. We have a defer function. What we can do, we can just wait for the recovery. So we are going to say if p equals recover. So if you look at the recover explanation, so recover, you can see in a hover one. So it says recover built-in function allows the program to manage behavior of panicking Go routine. So it means if there is a panic happen in this function, this Go routine, then do something about it. So we are just waiting for the, we're trying to recover if there's a panic. So let's quickly say, and if p is not nil, means there is something in a panic, then we are going to say print it out. For example, fmt printf panic happened, but it's okay. And let's just add s, then \n, and then we're going to do the p. So let's look. We have a panic, and we're saying if p is not nil, then do something here. I'm gonna run the code again. There we go. So now we have a panic happened, but it's okay. Negative number is not accepted. So let's just make the message a little bit better. Panic, or actually it's panic message. Okay, so let's run it one more time. Now panic happened, but it's okay because panic message, whatever. So we're going to get it from here. But I really want to do something more about this one, because we are going to be more careful about the panic. So here we want to say if such a panic happened, at this example, we recover. But if there are other panic, then don't recover. So what we have to do is to, for example, let's get the panic number. Okay, panic message. So I'm going to copy this panic message, going to the very top. I'm going to just say, so we have a negative number, and that's just the message we want to use. We can just call it anything, negative number message. Yeah. Okay. So we can just use this one in our panics and in panic recovery mode. So here we actually have a recovery. We are going to say if panic is equal to negative number message, then swallow or just move on and recover. Otherwise, so I'm going to say else if p is not equals nil, then this time actually panic, because we don't know what is the message. So here is actually what happens. So in the first case, we try to recover, but if the error is related to negative message, we just want to show and move on. But if then there is a problem, anything then like that negative number message, we want to actually panic. So the next thing we need to do is just to change the panic message here as well. So if the value is less than that, the panic message that we want to send is literally this one. So if the value is less than that, we want to panic. Otherwise, we don't want to panic. And then when we come here, we're checking for the message. If it is exactly negative number message, we don't want to panic. Otherwise, we want to panic. But maybe I want to just say, so we have a more readable message. Let me just zoom out a little bit so we have more, we can see more. First thing, you're gonna recover. The second bit is that we're not going to recover. And if I run now my code, panic happened, but it's okay. Panic message was that one. The moment I change the panic to something else, for example, let's have another condition here. We're going to say if the value is less than 0, have that panic. But if the value is 0, then we're going to say 0 is not accepted. So that's a totally different message. So we are coming here to recover, but we cannot recover. That's the problem. So let's see it now. We're not going to get an issue. I'm going to change this one to 0. So this time, actually, we have an issue. So we're closing the connection. That's a good thing. Then we're panicking. We try to recover. Panic happened, but I cannot recover this time. The message was 0 is not accepted. So now we learn how to panic the code, how to recover from the panic, and how to panic from the recovery. So that's how we're going to do all of them in a defer function. Make sure you put the recover in defer function and you're good to go. And now you can see we have defer, we have recovery, and also recover from the panic and panic from the recover as well. So we have now everything that we can use in a Go func. So we can just, for example, even copy this one and use it in our join function. I'm going to just use it here, left function, and the good message could be everywhere. So I'll move it to this one and make sure this is 2 and bring this one back in. So let's move our code again. So now we have a new joiner, we have closing the connection, no panic happens, and now we are adding those values and everything should be fine. As I said, this is just an example. In a real world examples, you might do a little bit different, but the whole idea of this tutorial or example was to use defer, was to use panic, recover, and again, just maybe panic from that recovery because the error is not known to us. Okay, I think we are at the end of this video. I hope you learn a lot of things from these Go functions or deep dive in Go functions, and you just learn how to use it in many different ways. So we had receivers, we had panic, we had recover, we have anonymous function, we had like stateful functions, if you remember, and also we learned quite a few more things. But here is just the gist of it. Golang has the first citizen of function, and why not to be empowered when we're going to use it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and please do let me know if you enjoy these kind of videos so we can just enjoy more by doing these kind of stuff. We dive deeply into a topic and just really try to use the most out of that concept. But before I go, please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to put more videos here very soon. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.